This guest I could keep on for hours because every time I've just talked off air with him, I've just been blown away of his knowledge. That's why it's
former CMO of Kodak. His expertise has led him to be featured on BBC, MSNBC, Fox Business, and even hosting C-Suite with Jeffrey Hazlette on Bloomberg TV.
Science. So they had more patents, over 28,000 patents, just in imaging. Just in imaging. I mean, I once joked that we should have an eye camera. Well, they had a patent for it. I once joked that we should have smelly vision. We should have vision that you could,
We're back to the Neil Haley Show here on the Total Media Network's Caregiver Dave celebrity segment. I'm excited to welcome to the program Caregiver Dave. Dave, how are you? This guest I could keep on for hours because every time I've just talked off air with him, I've just been blown away of his knowledge. That's why it's C-Suite. With someone who's run companies, I wish I could spend hours taking him out to lunch, learning certain things. That's how you become a successful entrepreneur, Dave.
So we have with us Jeffrey Hazlette. I hope I'm saying that right. No stranger to running a successful business after he was former CMO of Kodak. His expertise has led him to be featured on BBC, MSNBC, Fox Business, and even hosting C-Suite with Jeffrey Hazlette on Bloomberg TV. And he was also judge on Celebrity Apprentice. Wow, for 3 seasons. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Good to be here. And Neil, by the way, if you want to take me out to lunch and you're buying, I'll go anytime, brother. Anytime.
So that's the thing. How are you holding up? We want to buy lunch. We want to meet people. Jeff, how's that kind of put a damper COVID? Used to being always
a little bit, but you got to be innovative. I mean, so for instance, in our C-Suite network, what have I been doing? Doing salons. What's that mean? I'm hosting Scotch events every single Sunday. I'm hosting cocktail parties 2 or 3 times a week, and I'm just shipping the wine to somebody. So there's nothing that says you can't do it differently. Just because we used to get together and I used to drink my scotch with you face to face, now I can do it, over a Zoom call or a video call, and we can still get business done. The key thing is for almost everybody, don't sit on your ass. Don't sit back, okay? You got to drive and thrive. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I can't even sew a frickin' mask, but what I can do is help people. I'm a business first responder. And so let's look at the problems in a different way. Let's don't look at them as, oh my gosh, I'm never going to make my 1K on United again or Global. Instead, why don't we find another way to do business? And that's the way I look at things.
All right, Dave, first question.
That age-old discussion, are entrepreneurs born or are they raised? Do you consider yourself an entrepreneur? Because basically you're an executive. And did you grow up thinking that you would be an executive?
I always grew up thinking I was going to be something big, whatever that was. And so in each of my reiterations of inventing myself, I continue to do that. So I think it's in you. Do I think you can learn it? Yeah, I think you can learn it. I'm an entrepreneur. There's no doubt about it. When I went to a clinic, my wife was about fed up with me for so long because I'm a workaholic. It's worse than an alcoholic, because an alcoholic, they'll take it away at work. They just keep giving it to you. And so I went to a workshop, in Malibu, one of those big famous places for workaholic. It wasn't for workaholics. It was for alcoholics, drug, whatever.
Addicts.
Any addict or whatever. And so I'm sitting there in the back of the room. Of course, what am I doing? I'm figuring out the take. How many people, what's it cost for them to run through, and thinking, hey, this is a good business. That's my problem. But that's why I'm always thinking like that. I'm an entrepreneur. And I think a lot of it is born into the people, but I do believe you can learn a great deal of it.
Now, Jeff, you talk about, you started out as an executive in that process. So tell me specifically, you say entrepreneur. Do you feel that the executives or CEOs, chief product officers, any of those major, C-suite, they have to have an entrepreneurial mindset?
No, not at all. In fact, most of them don't. I mean, they don't have an entrepreneurial bone in their body for a great deal of people in those businesses. Let's look at what an entrepreneur typically starts off as a one-man or one-woman band. And then what they do is the next stage of that is they add devout followers, and they just grabbing people, whoever's close, their buddies, their friends, their sisters, mothers, maybe wife or husband. And then the next stage of that is then to add the devout, add the skilled technicians, the right kinds of people. And sometimes it can be that entrepreneur, but many times you see some of the entrepreneurs, take a back seat and bring somebody else on with greater skill sets. And as a result, they do a better job. And that's what you have to kind of look at in that evolution of an entrepreneur, is maybe you can make it. But typically when you get from this devout follower stage and you move to the skilled, these folks that were with you aren't going to make the next level, because they just don't have that skill set. They're a great bookkeeper, but not a great CFO. A great salesperson, but not a great chief revenue officer. A great communications person, but not a great strategic marketer. So you have to understand the realization of that in terms of business. I've bought and sold over 250 businesses in my career, over 25 billion in transactions. I've done that repeatedly. So, so some of us do have some of that inherentness and can also scale to that level of running. Like when I was at Kodak, I went from a 3-person office to running a team of 7,500, 140,000 employees, 182 billion in total sales, and was running a marketing budget of 17 billion. That's more gross revenue than some state budgets of government. So when you look at it like that, you can learn those things, you can develop those things, but at the core, you got to be good at what you do.
That's a great.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Are all entrepreneurs leaders? Because what is a leader? A leader is somebody who people will follow, and not every entrepreneur is a leader. Or am I wrong?
No, I think for the most part, they have a vision of where they want to go. And so, and if they can paint that vision effectively, then they're a leader. If they can't paint the vision effectively, then they're always going to be a one-person band, Yeah. And that's the hard part in being an entrepreneur. An idea without implementation is just air. And I have so many people talk to me all the time. They got this, they got this, they got this. And I have to turn to them and say, you got nothing. Dude, until you get it sold, until you get people buying it on an ongoing basis, what you got is an idea, a hobby, or a loss, And so until you can take those next steps, because a lot of people talk about what they're going to do. But an entrepreneur, I think they are overall leaders if they can paint the vision and get other people to drink the Kool-Aid. And there's the key.
Yeah.
I see those guys in Shark Tank all the time.
Yeah, well, and I was originally asked to be the very first host of Shark Tank years ago when they first got that started. Of course, if I were in New York right now, I actually share an office with Damon John from Shark Tank. So David's like my little brother. You might not know that. We're just different color and different sizes.
Now, and see, it's interesting you talk about that development and running Kodak and stuff like that, but you say you're different. But you use the word C-suite in a lot of your conversations and stuff like that. That's where when I interviewed you years ago and you were more, really pushing to teach executives how to run businesses because you have that entrepreneurial mindset. Now, have you shifted that focus in a lot of ways since we first talked?
No, it's the same. I mean, what's the role of a C-suite? Now, whether you're on Main Street in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where I'm from, or you're on Wall Street, what's the difference between those businesses? Nothing. The only difference between those businesses are the numbers of zeros behind their numbers. Same processes, same kinds of things they need to do. Quite frankly, same people, that are running those businesses. They're humans. So what our job in a C-suite, our job as a business leader at an executive level, when we talk about the C-suite, even if it's a small business of a few $1 million to billions of dollars, that anyone that's a VP or higher, that's in the C-suite.
Okay.
Right? Even at a small business, that's the chief executive officers of that business. They just call themselves a VP. As you get bigger, there's more C's than V's. So there's still a lot of V's. But our job, Neil, is to be the most strategic person in the room. Now, a lot of times everyone thinks we have to be the smartest people, but we're not. Trust me, look around. If you go look at some of the C-suites, and if you look even small businesses to big businesses, although I do find more small businesses a lot smarter than the bigger ones, okay? I do find leaders in small businesses, and why? Because they got to eat. They depend on it. And if they don't make the numbers that month, hey, the kids aren't getting shoes. We're not putting groceries on the table. The payroll's not getting met. Whereas in a bigger business, they can move past that and they get a little bit more esoteric, and you typically see that a lot. But when But by and large, our job's to be the most strategic person in the room. And that's what we should be doing as a leader. Always be looking and playing the chess game, moves ahead. That whether you're a small business or a big business, and whether you're a small C-suite or a big C-suite, whether you're V level, vice president, or you're a C level, you want to make sure that you're being the most strategic person in the room.
I do.
Yeah. Well, tell me how Kodak fell into your lap and how you went from just coming into the company to becoming the CMO.
Well, so I was in the printing industry for a number of years, and so in the graphic arts, visual communications, some level marketing of some kind, sales and marketing at all time. And I had been consulting to Kodak and Xerox and people in that industry for a while, and was in the printing business. And I saw some technology and saw some things that Kodak was doing. Kodak, if you look at their expertise, even back then, they had material science and imaging science. They were really good at creating, products made from material science. So film, okay? But film was also an imaging science. So they had more patents, over 28,000 patents, just in imaging. I mean, I once joked that we should have an eye camera. Well, they had a patent for it. I once joked that we should have smelly vision. We should have vision that you could, pictures that you could smell, and they had a patent on it. So no matter what you would think of, they had a patent on it.
Wow.
You should be able to look at a photograph or look at an image and then tell what the person's net worth is based on what kind of shirts they wear, or the picture that's behind you right now, Dave. I could tell you, what geographical area you are. I mean, all these things. They had patents on all this stuff. Well, so what I saw was in the intersection between those two. So I looked for companies. And so as I moved around the industry, and I was at some very big commercial printing operations, and I did a roll-up of about 120 companies in 1 year. Later, that got taken over in a hostile takeover, a publicly traded company, a couple $2 billion. And so I left. And so after I left, I started looking for things that I could do. And I started looking for companies that, I could take to other companies. And I took about $2.5 billion worth of acquisitions to Kodak. And after I did that, they said, it's time for you to come in. And so after I sold them about the fourth or fifth company, they said, hey, it's time for you to start working with us. And so, who wouldn't want to work with Kodak, one of the biggest brands in the world, on the decline without question, but, it gave me a great opportunity. It's probably one of the best, and certainly if not the best opportunity I've ever had in my life.
What is the future of Kodak, by the way?
Well, I mean, they're about a $9 billion company, throwing about $2 billion to the bottom line. So, even though they went bankrupt I left about 10 years ago. And even though they went bankrupt about 2 years ago, they're still doing, still very viable company. A lot of patents, a lot of intellectual property that's there. So, I don't know about you, $9 billion per still pretty big company.
Yeah,
you think the new leadership could take them to the next level and get them back to what they were?
Oh, absolutely, without question. The problem that Kodak had was the embracing of digital technology, right? I mean, without question. Now, that wasn't, everybody said, well, they didn't see it coming. Well, they
didn't have a patent for, right?
What's that?
That's one thing they didn't have a patent for.
Well, no, actually they did. They owned the digital patent for digital cameras, and they pawned it off on Apple and many other companies. But what they did was, Dave, they tried to protect what they thought they were. So everybody at the time, the leadership of Kodak up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and into the 90s, believed they were a film company. Now, they're never a film company. Here is the demise of the company. If you believe you're a film company, they were never a film company. They help make, manage, and move images and information. That's what they did, whether it was digital or, a tangible product, film. But they got it in their head that they're a film company, so what they did was they did everything to protect the film. And so the hubris of their own success, which Jim Collins writes about it in his book about the decline of companies, chaos. And when you see these kinds of things, when people start to build moats around their businesses, they start to become under siege, like the knights of old, right? Like the kings of all these little fiefdoms. And so that's indeed what Kodak did. Rather than embracing digital, in saying, regardless of whether it's film or it's a digital camera, I mean, this phone that's sitting right here in front of me, this phone right here, they own the technology that goes inside this phone. Every camera that you saw there was a result of Kodak, but yet they let that go by, right? They let that out of their hands because they failed to realize. Think about it. We all knew Kodak moment. They were a very celebratory brand. They owned that, and they let that go. In fact, they actually let the trademark expire before I got there.
Wow.
I mean, that tells you the essence of who they were. And they've kind of snapped back into that still, even with the bankruptcy. And that's the only criticism I still have of them is it was the most recognizable brand in the world. It was the most loved brand in the world. Right. More than Apple, more than any other brand, exactly. Kodak. And by the way, Kodak still has that emotion, that emotional piece. So why couldn't you have tied it to that? And they never had those discussions until a group of leaders got there about the same time I did, and that's why I came. But we didn't have enough. By then, man, I'm telling you, the planes had already flown. We didn't have enough runway. At that point, it was just like, I'm walking around with lists of buildings going, because we had hundreds of buildings going, you want one? You want one? I'll give you one. I'll give you a building. I mean, that's what we were doing. And we had our own electricity plant. We had five fire houses, fire stations on our property. I mean, I could sit on the 17th floor on the tallest building in Rochester and look north, and everywhere I would look from here to here, we owned.
Oh my gosh.
We owned. So when you think about that, just the overhead, the transformation of that, the implosion of buildings, the changing of the way that you had to do things, it was a massive target. And then on top of that, Dave, you're surrounded by all these captains of no, who say, oh, we tried that before, or we're a film company, or it's not in the budget. I mean, I used to hear that crap all the time, and it's tough to change that, and it's tough to transform a business when you believe your best days are behind you.
And then that's the interesting thing, Dave. I was going to jump right to this question. Being an entrepreneur, but also working for a business, at times I see the differences in their thought process. If you have a team of people, they say no a lot. And I saw that. I'm seeing that from an organization I'm working hand in hand with now, that there's no, oh, we can't do this, or we don't want to do that. What did you learn from Kodak that you've taken on for your own businesses after that?
If it's the right thing, I don't care if they say no. I don't care. I'm going to do it. That was, in essence, that's what my job was. The CEO of Kodak at the time, Antonio Perez, used to say, "Don't let them absorb you. Don't let them be the cyberborg and absorb you. If they do that to you, I will miss you. I will fire you." He told me that. He said, "I'll still go shooting," because he told me why we were going shooting one day on Saturdays. We used to go skeet shooting, and he said, "I'll still go shooting with you. You'll still be my friend, but I'm going to fire you." And so I learned very quickly that there's a certain agenda that you need to drive and have to drive, and your job isn't to sit around and wait till you get everybody to get on board and you're at 100%. You get the number that you can get on and you go do it. That's your job. It's like, and I go to my own team today and I'll say, hey, I need this in order to be successful. And they come back, instead of saying here, they offer it to me here. And I'll say, why did you do that? I just told you I needed 100,000 registrants on this thing, and you're saying 50. Well, Jeff, it's not in the budget. Well, who the frick gave you a budget? I didn't give you a budget. I said, go get me 100,000. I didn't say 50,000. If I said 50,000, I would have asked you for 50,000. I didn't say 50. I said 100. So go get me 100 now. And quite frankly, right now, go get me 125, because now you've really ticked me off. Okay. And now we're behind, and I'm going to need more because you're sitting around here saying no. So your job is to go get me that now. And then you're to tell me how. You're to tell me that it's going to cost more than you think it is. It's going to cost an acquisition cost of this, or it's going to take this much time. Okay, fine. Tell me. Fine. I'm okay with that. And that's what I learned from that experience, Neil, was the fact that that's our job. That's what we're supposed to do. It's like in the military. You take that hill. I'm taking that hill. Right. Yeah.
It makes it so. Listening to all this and hearing the corporate world, are you happy that you're in this world? You were with CNBC and all these different things. I mean, you had different shows business-wise, and then started the C-Suite Network. Are you happy now that you're kind of more and more driving the media, driving your whole atmosphere than being in control of waiting on the mainstream media for things?
Yes and no. Because at the same time, you're in the bleeding edge of it. So I've been, I was bleeding before there was blood in it. So, and at least on the OTT side, the over-the-top television, in the podcast network, which we've built into the world's largest podcast network now with C-Suite Radio, but at least for business. So the answer is yes. There's many days of jubilation, and I can't wait to go to bed at night so I can hurry up and get going the next day. But there are a lot of days I'd like to sleep in, like it's a pain in the ass. We all have that. What's the life of an entrepreneur? One day we're excited, and then an hour later, like, I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah.
This is the worst thing in the world. And so you just have to learn to overcome and understand that our job, a lot of times people say this, Neil, fail fast. Bullshit. That sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Failing sucks. Okay.
Yeah.
Our job is to win fast.
Yeah.
All right. And to win as fast as we can, because we don't have the resources, we don't have the money. That's the stuff I miss. When everybody says, hey, what do you miss about the big corporations? I always say, to be politically correct, I always say, well, I miss the people. But it's not really the people. What I really miss is the capital that I had available, the resources I had available, and I also miss the corporate jet. I miss that a great deal.
I'm sure you miss the corporate jet. So you have your own corporate jet, right? Or that's not worth it. That's not in the budget. You're a corporate
you
company, not in
you
the budget.
can't. It's tough to justify a corporate jet, or 2 or 3 of them as we had. It's tough to do that unless you're at a big, huge scale, because it's a cost. So, but you can charter them. I chartered one yesterday. So you can.
Okay. All right. So Dave's final question is, again, involving caregiving. We're interested to see Jeff has been involved in caregiving. Go ahead, Dave, with your question.
Yeah, so I'm just a normal guy who one day my wife had a headache after 22 years of marriage. We were married 45. And we were in the empty nest phase of life. We're supposed to be enjoying life. Kids are gone. And she has a stroke, loses her speech, becomes paralyzed on one side. And we grieve for a couple of years. We almost break up. But then we hang in there, and she reinvents herself, and our love is rekindled. And now we travel all across the country talking to caregivers, because I made so many mistakes. And I started the website, caregiverdave.com, to help caregivers stay alive, because 30% of them die before their loved ones do. I like to say, if you're not a caregiver, just wait. You're either going to become one or you're going to need one. So my question to you, Jeff, is how has caregiving touched your life?
Well, it happens all the time. I mean, when COVID broke out, my wife, who I've been married now for 38 years together, for 40 years together.
Congratulations.
She has a brother. Thank you very much. Well, I know me, I wouldn't be married to me, so I'm very blessed. Okay. So, but she has a brother who's mentally handicapped. And and he's missing, he's only got a piece of a functioning kidney. And when COVID hit, I said, we got to get Todd. We got to bring him home. And that's what you do. Somebody asked me, why would you do that? I said, that's what you do. Why wouldn't you do that? So we bring Todd back in. Todd's been staying with us during the COVID experience. And, is that an easy thing? Absolutely not. He's a curmudgeon. He's only 2 years younger than me. He operates at about a 13-year-old level. You can imagine what that's like given every day. It's just like being a parent, but that's what you do. That's what you have to do. And we're all going to be faced with that. I mean, look at the age tipping that's about to occur, right? And anyone that's I've had parents that we've had to give care for, and so forth and so on. It's just part of what you have to do. And that's what you sign up. That's what, by the way, that's what families are supposed to be here for. That's what that's all about. And it's, some of us get a lottery ticket. Some of us get a ticket that's not quite the lottery, right? That's the name of the game. But our goal is to find out how to make it the lottery ticket. And I congrats to you to rekindle that, find that, make that happen. That's pretty special. And you got to look, just like in COVID right now, when everybody's talking about the doom and gloom and all the stuff, you got to look for opportunities in crisis. Always opportunities.
There's
always,
just like there in if something happens to my wife someday, and or if something happens to me, we got to look for those good things. We got to look for those moments of inspiration, motivation, even education, and then certainly we got to turn it into something that's a lot more positive.
All right, Jeff. Best place to connect with you and all those things. Where can we go?
Just look at, there's my email right there, jeff@c-suitenetwork.com, c-suitenetwork.com, or jeff@hazlette.com. If you look up C-Suite or you look up Hazlette, you're going to find me.
Yeah, you're awesome, and a really good connection, and unbelievable to know that one of your partners lives in Gibsonia. So we'll have to make that connection and have a sit down for coffee. I guess when they open, we close the restaurants again. Can you believe that in Allegheny County? So we're dealing with just outdoor dining, and someday we'll get back to normal. I have my hands in a lot of different things right now, and
after the election,
great to create these relationships. And when it gets back to normal and you're back to New York, I definitely want to have lunch with you when I'm in New York.
Or some scotch. Either way, I'm good.
Either way. Okay. All right. Good. So I appreciate you taking the time, and thanks for stopping by.
Thank you. Appreciate it, gentlemen.
All right, guys. That was the Neil Haley Show. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.